The wedding dress cost more than her car, but it didn't stop the whispers that sliced through the church like cold wind through broken glass. Delilah Vaughn stood at the entrance of St. Catherine's Cathedral, her ivory gown cascading around her curves, her bouquet of white roses trembling in her hands. She could hear them, the guests her fiancé Marcus had insisted on inviting, his entire social circle of trust fund brats and country club vultures. Their voices carried through the cavernous space, bouncing off marble columns and stained glass windows that depicted saints who surely never had to endure this particular brand of humiliation. "I can't believe Marcus is actually going through with this," someone hissed from the third pew. "She's enormous. Did you see how tight that dress is? Probably trapped him with a pregnancy. Why else would he marry someone like that?" Delilah's best friend and maid of honor, Ashley, squeezed her arm. "Ignore them, you look absolutely stunning. Marcus is lucky to have you." But Delilah knew better. She'd known for months that something was wrong, that Marcus had grown distant, that his eyes wandered whenever they were out together. Still, when he proposed, or rather, when his mother cornered him at Thanksgiving dinner and made the suggestion so pointed it became unavoidable, Delilah had convinced herself it would get better. That love could bloom from obligation. The organ music swelled, and she began her walk down the aisle alone. Her father had passed away 2 years ago, and her mother was too ill to make the trip from Arizona. Every step felt like wading through cement, and the stairs burned into her skin like brands. Women in designer dresses leaned toward each other, lips moving behind manicured hands. Men regarded her with something between pity and contempt. Marcus stood at the altar looking pale and trapped, his jaw tight, his eyes focused somewhere above her head rather than on her face. His best man, Chad, didn't even try to hide his disgusted expression. The priest, Father Gregory, smiled at her with genuine warmth, the only kindness in the entire building. "Dearly beloved," he began, his voice rich and steady, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of Marcus Theodore Harrison and Delilah Marie Vaughn in holy matrimony. Holy catastrophe is more like it." Someone muttered loud enough to carry. Laughter rippled through the right side of the church, where Marcus's family and friends sat in judgment. Delilah's cheeks burned. She focused on breathing, on not dropping the bouquet, on making it through the next 20 minutes without breaking down completely. If anyone has reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace. The traditional pause stretched. Delilah prayed for it to end quickly, for this nightmare to continue toward its conclusion, so she could at least retreat to the reception and find a corner to hide in. Then the cathedral doors slammed open with a boom that shook dust from the rafters. Every head turned. Delilah twisted to look, and her breath caught in her throat. A man stood in the doorway, backlit by the afternoon sun that somehow didn't seem to touch him. He was impossibly tall, well over 6 feet, with a presence that filled the massive space like a physical force. His skin was pale as alabaster, flawless and luminous in a way that didn't seem quite human. Hair the color of fresh snow fell past his shoulders in a straight cascade, framing a face so beautiful it hurt to look at. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, lips that were full and sensual, and eyes that glowed a deep ancient crimson. He wore a black suit that looked like it cost more than everything in the church combined, tailored perfectly to his broad shoulders and lean frame. Power radiated from him in waves that Delilah could feel even from 50 feet away, making her skin prickle and her heart race. The stranger's gaze swept across the assembled guests with lethal precision, and Delilah watched in shock as people physically recoiled. The whispers died instantly. Even the organ player's hands stilled on the keys. Then those crimson eyes found her, and the world narrowed to that single point of connection. He moved down the aisle with liquid grace, each step deliberate and predatory. The guests pressed back against the pews, some actually standing and moving out of his way. Delilah saw fear in their faces, primal and absolute, though she couldn't understand why. The man was strange, certainly, but the reaction seemed extreme. "I have reason," he said, his voice deep and accented with something old world that Delilah couldn't place. European, perhaps, but no specific country she could identify. Many reasons, in fact. Father Gregory had gone completely white. "Sir, this is a sacred ceremony. If you don't have legitimate cause to legitimate?" The stranger's lips curved, not quite a smile but something more dangerous. "The groom is marrying this woman for her inheritance. He plans to drain her accounts and leave her within 6 months. His mistress is currently waiting at the Harbor View Hotel, room 347, where they've been meeting every Tuesday and Thursday for the past year." The church erupted. Marcus's face went from pale to crimson in seconds. "That's a lie. Who the hell are you? How dare you come in here? And your mistress's name is Veronica Ashford. She has a butterfly tattoo on her left hip and a birthmark behind her right knee. She prefers champagne to wine and calls you Marky in bed, which you claim to hate but tolerate because she does things your fiancé refuses to do. Women gasped. Men shifted uncomfortably. Marcus looked like he wanted to crawl under the altar. Delilah felt like she'd been punched in the stomach, even though some part of her had known, had suspected. But hearing it confirmed so publicly, so brutally, made it real in a way that shattered something inside her. Furthermore, the stranger continued, turning his attention back to Delilah. These guests who mock you so freely are thieves and hypocrites. The woman in the blue dress, third row, embezzled $40,000 from her own charity last year. The man in the gray suit has 3 families in 3 different states, none of whom know about each other. The blonde in the front row regularly poisons her business partners' reputations with false rumors to steal their clients. He kept going, exposing secret after secret, and Delilah watched the horrified faces around her transform from smug superiority to panicked terror. People began standing, gathering their things, fleeing toward the exits. Within minutes, half the church had emptied. Marcus tried to rush toward Delilah, desperation in his eyes. "Baby, listen, he's lying. I don't know what his game is, but you can't believe." The stranger moved faster than should have been possible, placing himself between Marcus and Delilah. "Touch her, and I will remove your hands." Something in his tone made it clear this wasn't hyperbole. Marcus stumbled backward and Chad grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the side door. "Let's go, man, this is insane." They fled with the remaining guests, a stampede of silk and shame, until only Delilah, Ashley, Father Gregory, and the mysterious stranger remained in the vast, echoing cathedral. Delilah found her voice, though it shook. "Who are you? How did you know all those things?" The stranger turned to face her fully, and up close he was even more devastating. Those red eyes held centuries of knowledge, of power, of things she couldn't begin to comprehend. "My name is Lucien Ashford, and I know those things because I have lived long enough to recognize corruption in all its forms." Ashford? Like no relation to Marcus's paramour, it's a common enough name. He stepped closer, and Delilah caught a scent like winter midnight, crisp and cold and mysterious. "You don't deserve what they were doing to you, Delilah Vaughn. You don't deserve their cruelty or their judgment. How do you know my name? I've been watching you for some time." Ashley finally found her voice, stepping forward protectively. "Okay, that's creepy. Really creepy. Delilah, we should call the police." But Delilah couldn't look away from Lucien. Something about him called to her, pulled at something deep in her chest. Why were you watching me?" Lucien was quiet for a long moment, his expression shifting to something almost vulnerable. "Because 6 months ago, I was walking through downtown during a rare overcast day. I heard music coming from a small cafe, piano music. I followed the sound and saw you through the window, playing an old upright in the corner, lost in the melody. You played Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, and you played it with such emotion, such pure feeling, that I stood outside in the rain for 20 minutes just listening. I haven't felt anything like that in over 300 years. The confession hung in the air between them. Ashley made a small, strangled sound. 300? Okay, he's crazy. Delilah, we're leaving. I'm a vampire, Lucien said simply, as if commenting on the weather. I am the king of the North American Covenant, ruler of all vampire territories from Alaska to Mexico. And I have been searching for something real, something genuine, for longer than you can imagine. When I heard you play, when I saw the joy on your face despite the fact that you were alone in that cafe with no audience but yourself, I knew I had found something precious. Delilah should have been terrified, should have run screaming, but instead she felt an odd calm settling over her. Vampires aren't real. Lucien's eyes began to glow brighter, the crimson intensifying until they cast shadows across his perfect face. His canines lengthened, becoming pointed fangs that should have looked monstrous but somehow only made him more beautiful in a dangerous, otherworldly way. I assure you, we are very real. Father Gregory crossed himself and began backing toward the vestry. I'll just give you privacy. Ashley grabbed Delilah's arm. We're leaving now. But Delilah gently extracted herself from her friend's grip. It's okay, Ash, I'm okay. He just admitted to being a vampire and stalking you. None of this is okay. Delilah knew her friend was right. Logically, she should be afraid. But all she felt was a strange sense of rightness, as if puzzle pieces were finally clicking into place. The way Marcus's friends reacted when he walked in, the fear. They sensed something, didn't they? Something predatory. Lucien inclined his head. Humans have instincts that have dulled over centuries of civilization. But on a primal level, they recognize a predator when they encounter one. And you came here to stop my wedding. Why? If you've been watching me for 6 months, you must have known Marcus was cheating. Why wait until now? His expression darkened. I discovered last week that he was planning something worse than infidelity. Marcus Harrison is in debt to some very dangerous people. He planned to take out life insurance on you and arrange an accident within the year. You weren't just going to lose your money, Delilah. You were going to lose your life." The words hit her like ice water. Ashley gasped, pulling out her phone. "I'm calling 911. "By all means," Lucien said calmly. "Though you'll find Marcus is already gone. He's on a plane to the Cayman Islands by now, running from both his debts and the evidence I've anonymously supplied to the authorities. He won't be bothering Delilah again." Delilah sank onto the nearest pew, her legs giving out. The wedding dress pooled around her like a collapsing cloud. Her mind reeled, trying to process everything. The humiliation, the revelation of Marcus's betrayal, the danger she'd been in, and now this impossible man claiming to be a vampire king who'd been watching her for months. "I'm going to be sick," she whispered. Lucien was beside her in an instant, moving so fast he seemed to simply appear. He crouched down so they were at eye level, his cold hand gentle on her shoulder. "Breathe. You're safe now. I promise you. You're safe." "Safe? My life just exploded. Everyone saw. They all heard. They heard the truth about your worthless fiancé and their own corruptions. Let them drown in their shame. You have nothing to be embarrassed about. Easy for you to say. You're not the one they were mocking for being fat." Lucien's eyes flashed with anger, and the temperature in the church seemed to drop 10 degrees. Those insects wouldn't recognize beauty if it burned them alive. "You are magnificent, Delilah. Every curve, every inch of you is perfection. The fact that they're too blind and stupid to see it only proves their unworthiness to exist in your presence." The intensity in his voice, the absolute conviction, made something crack open in Delilah's chest. She'd spent so long accepting the world's judgment, internalizing the cruelty, believing that her body made her less than. And here was this impossible being, this ancient vampire king, looking at her like she was the most valuable thing he'd ever seen. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. "I don't understand any of this. I know. And I apologize for the dramatic entrance. But I couldn't stand by and watch you bind yourself to someone who would hurt you." Lucien produced a handkerchief from his pocket, silk and monogrammed, and carefully wiped her tears. "I've made a mess of this. I should have approached you differently, privately. But when I heard the things those people were saying about you, when I saw the pain on your face, I couldn't control myself." Ashley hovered nearby, phone still in hand, clearly torn between protective instinct and confusion. "Delilah, I don't know what to do here. This is so far beyond normal that I can't even." Delilah looked at her best friend, seeing the concern and fear in her eyes. "Can you give me a few minutes, please? I need to understand what's happening. I'm not leaving you alone with him." "I won't harm her," Lucien said, standing and moving several feet away, giving Delilah space. "You have my word for whatever that's worth to you. I am many things, but I do not prey on the innocent. And Delilah is the last person in this world I would ever hurt." Something in his tone must have convinced Ashley, because she slowly lowered the phone. "Fine, 5 minutes. I'll be right outside. You scream and I'm coming in with pepper spray and whatever else I can find." After Ashley left, trailing reluctance and suspicion, Delilah forced herself to stand. The wedding dress suddenly felt like a costume, ridiculous and ill-fitting in every emotional sense. "I need to get out of this dress. There's a room in the back where you can change. I'll wait here." She gathered the skirts and made her way to the small chamber behind the altar where brides typically prepared. Someone had left her street clothes there, jeans and a soft sweater that felt like a relief after the constrictive gown. As she changed, her mind spun through possibilities and impossibilities. Vampires were real. At least one vampire was real, and he claimed to be a king. He'd been watching her, protecting her from a danger she hadn't even known existed. He thought she was beautiful. That last part felt almost more unbelievable than the vampire revelation. When she emerged, Lucien was standing by one of the stained glass windows, the colored light painting patterns across his pale skin. He turned as she approached, and she saw something like relief cross his features. "Better?" he asked. "Different. I don't know about better." She crossed her arms, suddenly feeling exposed without the dress's layers. "Explain this to me. All of it. If you're really a vampire, if this is all real, I need to understand." Lucien gestured to the pews and they sat, maintaining a careful distance. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Start with the vampire part." "How is that possible?" "I was born in 1702 in what is now Romania. I was turned in 1726 by an ancient vampire named Elisabetta, who ruled Eastern Europe at the time. The process of turning is complex, but essentially, vampire blood mixed with human blood under the right circumstances creates the transformation. We are stronger, faster, and functionally immortal, unless killed by specific means. We require blood to survive, though how much varies by individual. Sunlight weakens and burns us, though it won't kill immediately. We have enhanced senses, regenerative abilities, and certain supernatural gifts that develop over time. Delilah processed this, her analytical mind automatically cataloging the information despite its impossibility. The red eyes? A mark of our nature. They glow brighter when we feel strong emotions or use our powers. And you're a king? The vampire world is organized into territories and covenants. North America is my domain. I oversee thousands of vampires, maintain order, enforce our laws, and manage relations with the human world, which largely doesn't know we exist. It's a complicated balance of power, politics, and survival. That sounds exhausting. His lips quirked. It is. 300 years of politics and power struggles tends to wear on the soul, which is why that moment in the cafe meant so much to me. I heard you play, and for the first time in decades I felt something other than obligation and weariness. I felt wonder. Delilah's heart stuttered. You can't just say things like that. Why not? It's the truth. Because I just had my wedding destroyed in front of everyone. Because I'm processing the fact that vampires exist, and one of them is sitting in a church telling me he's been watching me for months. Because this is insane, and I don't know if I'm having a breakdown or if you're actually real. Lucien reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His skin was cool but not unpleasant, smooth and strong. I'm real. This is real. And I understand that it's overwhelming. If you want me to leave, I will. But I wanted you to know the truth about Marcus. And I wanted you to know that you deserve so much better than what those people were offering you. His thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand, and Delilah felt the touch resonate through her entire body. What do you want from me? Want? You said you've been watching me. You stopped my wedding, exposed my fiancé, and revealed yourself as a vampire. What's your endgame here? Lucien was quiet for a long moment, his crimson eyes searching her face. Honestly, I don't know. I didn't plan this far ahead. I just knew I couldn't let you marry him, couldn't let you be hurt by someone so unworthy. Beyond that, I hoped only to speak with you, to know you beyond what I'd observed from a distance. That's not creepy at all, Delilah said, but there was no heat in it. I know how it sounds. In my defense, immortality gives one a different perspective on time and courtship. I meant no harm. And if I tell you to leave, to never contact me again? Pain flashed across his features, quick but genuine. Then I would respect your wishes. Your happiness and comfort matter more than my desires. The sincerity in his voice undid something in Delilah's defenses. She should send him away, should process this disaster of a day and figure out her life without adding an impossible supernatural complication. But looking at Lucien, feeling the gentleness of his touch despite the power radiating from him, she found she didn't want him to go. I don't want you to leave, she whispered. His eyes flared brighter. Delilah, but I need time. This is a lot, and I'm barely holding it together. Can you give me time to process? Of course, whatever you need. He released her hand and pulled out a card, black with silver embossing. My number. Call me when you're ready, or if you need anything at all. I'll have people watching to make sure Marcus doesn't cause any more trouble, but they'll be discreet. You won't even know they're there. More watching. Great. Protection, he corrected gently. Not surveillance. There's a difference. Delilah took the card, the paper heavy and expensive between her fingers. Okay, I'll call you. I need to go home and scream into a pillow for a while. Lucien stood, and she followed suit. He towered over her, but somehow it didn't feel threatening. Just solid and safe in a way she couldn't explain. For what it's worth, I think you're handling this with remarkable grace. Most humans don't react this well to discovering vampires exist. Most humans probably haven't just had their wedding implode spectacularly. My capacity for shock is pretty maxed out right now. Fair point. He hesitated, then bowed slightly, an oddly formal gesture that somehow suited him. Thank you for listening. Thank you for not running screaming. Give me time. The screaming might come later. His smile was small but genuine. I look forward to hearing from you, Delilah Vaughn. Then he was gone, moving so fast she barely saw him leave, just a blur of shadow and cold air. Delilah stood alone in the church, holding his card, wondering if she'd just hallucinated the entire encounter. Ashley burst back in moments later. Is he gone? Are you okay? What happened? I have no idea, Delilah said honestly. Absolutely no idea. The next 3 days passed in a surreal blur. The story of the destroyed wedding spread through their social circles like wildfire. Videos had been taken. Of course, multiple guests had recorded Lucien's dramatic entrance and subsequent revelations. Delilah's phone exploded with messages ranging from concerned to gleeful to vicious. Marcus's arrest made the local news. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit murder. The evidence against him was overwhelming. delivered anonymously to the police in a package so complete it suggested either law enforcement cooperation or someone with extraordinary resources. Delilah knew it had been Lucien. She should have felt vindicated. Instead, she just felt exhausted. Her apartment became a refuge, and Ashley stayed with her, providing support and a steady stream of takeout and wine. They didn't talk much about Lucien, though Delilah caught her friend staring at her speculatively several times. On the third night, as they sat on the couch watching mindless television, Ashley finally spoke. "Are you going to call him?" Delilah had been holding Lucien's card constantly, running her thumb over the embossed lettering. "I don't know. He's a vampire. I know. A vampire king, apparently. I know. And he's been stalking you, watching me. There's supposedly a difference." Ashley grabbed the remote and muted the TV. "Delilah, be serious. This is crazy. Everything about this situation is crazy. Even if he really is a vampire, even if he really did save you from Marcus's plans, that doesn't mean you should get involved with him. You don't know anything about him or his world. I know he looks at me like I matter, like I'm not just a body to be judged and found wanting." Delilah's voice cracked. "Do you know how long it's been since someone looked at me that way? Maybe never, Ash. My entire life, I've been too much or not enough, too big or too loud or too whatever. And this man, this vampire, he sees me and thinks I'm magnificent." Those were his exact words. "He could be manipulating you, he could be. Probably is in some way, but what if he's not? What if this impossible thing is real? And I walk away from it because I'm too scared to believe that someone could actually want me." Ashley's expression softened. "Oh, honey, someone will want you. The right someone, a human someone who doesn't come with supernatural complications. You don't know that. I've been trying to find that someone my whole adult life. Marcus was the closest I got, and look how that turned out." Delilah stood pacing the small living room. "Maybe this is crazy. Maybe I'll regret it. But I need to know. I need to understand what this feeling is when I look at him." "What feeling?" "Like I've been waiting for him without knowing it." Ashley sighed, pulling her knees to her chest. "I can't tell you what to do. But if you're going to explore this, please be careful. Promise me you'll be smart about it. I promise." That night, alone in her bedroom, Delilah pulled out her phone and stared at Lucien's number for 20 minutes before finally finding the courage to type a message. "Can we talk?" The response came within seconds. "Name the place and time." She smiled despite her nerves. "Tomorrow, downtown. That cafe where you heard me play. 2 o'clock. I'll be there." Delilah didn't sleep much that night, her mind spinning through scenarios and possibilities. What was she doing? Getting involved with a vampire was beyond reckless. But the alternative, going back to her normal life, pretending none of this had happened, accepting that the world was exactly as she'd always thought it was, felt impossible now. She'd been given a glimpse of something extraordinary. She had to know where it led. The next afternoon she arrived at the Harmony Cafe 15 minutes early, choosing a table in the back corner where they'd have some privacy. The cafe was quiet, only a few patrons scattered among the mismatched tables and chairs. The old upright piano sat against the far wall, slightly out of tune but loved. Lucien arrived exactly at 2 o'clock, and Delilah's breath caught at the sight of him. He wore dark jeans and a black sweater that somehow managed to look both casual and elegant. His white hair was pulled back in a low tie, emphasizing the sharp beauty of his features. Dark sunglasses covered his eyes until he removed them, revealing that mesmerizing crimson. He slid into the chair across from her with fluid grace. "Thank you for calling. Thank you for coming. During the day, I mean. I thought sunlight was dangerous for vampires? It's overcast and I'm old enough to tolerate brief exposure as long as I'm careful. I wasn't going to miss this because of weather." His gaze was intense, searching. "How are you? Truly." Confused, overwhelmed, curious. Delilah wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "I have about 1,000 questions. Ask them. I'll answer whatever I can." She started with the practical things: how vampires fed, how their society worked, what their laws were. Lucien answered patiently, explaining that most vampires had arrangements with willing donors or used blood banks through discreet channels, that killing humans was strictly forbidden under covenant law and punished by permanent death, that the vampire world operated parallel to human society, hidden but interconnected. Then she asked the harder questions. "Why me, really? It can't just be because you heard me play piano once." Lucien leaned back, considering his words carefully. "You're right. It's more than that, though the music was what first caught my attention. I've spent 300 years observing humanity, Delilah. I've seen the best and worst of what people can be. And what struck me about you, beyond your talent, was your genuine kindness. I watched you help an elderly man carry his groceries to his car in the rain. I saw you leave your coat on a bench with a note for anyone who needed it. I heard you defend a teenager being harassed at a bookstore by entitled customers. You have a good heart, and those are rarer than you might think. You really were watching me a lot. I was trying to understand what I was feeling. It's been so long since I felt anything beyond duty and weariness. You woke something in me, Delilah. Something I thought had died centuries ago. Her heart pounded. What did I wake? Hope. The possibility of connection. The desire for something beyond the endless political games and power struggles that consume most of my existence. He leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. I'm tired, Delilah. So tired of being alone, of living without genuine feeling. And then I saw you, and suddenly I wasn't tired anymore. I was alive in a way I haven't been since I was human. Tears pricked her eyes. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you barely know. I know. I'm not asking you to fix me or save me. I'm just being honest about what you've meant to me, even from a distance. What you could mean to me if you gave us a chance at what, dating? A relationship? How would that even work? You're a vampire king. I'm a failed bride who plays piano at charity events and works as a music teacher. Our worlds couldn't be more different. Our circumstances are different, but people are people regardless of mortality. We both want connection, understanding, and affection. Those desires don't change just because I've lived longer or require blood to survive. Delilah stared at him, at the hope and vulnerability in his ancient eyes. This is insane. Yes, it could never work. It could if we wanted it to. I don't know anything about your world. I could teach you, if you're willing to learn. She wanted to say yes. The word was right there, pressing against her lips. But fear held it back, fear of being hurt again, of making another catastrophic mistake, of wanting something impossible and having it destroy her. Lucien seemed to sense her hesitation. He reached across the table, palm up, an offering rather than a demand. Delilah, I'm not asking you to decide your entire future right now. I'm asking for a chance to know you better. Let me take you to dinner. Let us talk more. If at any point you want to stop, if this becomes too much, you can walk away. I won't stop you, and I won't make you feel guilty for choosing your own comfort and safety. She looked at his hand, pale and strong and steady. Everything about this was risky. But hadn't playing it safe led her to Marcus? Hadn't following the expected path almost gotten her killed? Maybe it was time to try something different. Delilah placed her hand in his, feeling the cool strength of his grip. Dinner. We can start with dinner. His smile could have lit the entire city. Tonight? Tomorrow. I need to process today first. Tomorrow then, I'll pick you up at 7. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing more easily as Delilah relaxed. Lucien told her about his life before turning growing up in a small Romanian village, learning to fight from his military father, falling in love with music when a traveling composer stayed in their town for a season. She told him about growing up in Arizona, losing her father to cancer, discovering her own love of music through her grandmother's piano lessons. It felt natural despite the supernatural context. It felt right. When they parted, Lucien pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles, the gesture courtly and sweet. Until tomorrow, Delilah. She floated home, Ashley's concerned questions barely registering. All she could think about was the way Lucien looked at her, the way his presence made her feel both safe and exhilarated. The next evening, Delilah spent an embarrassing amount of time choosing an outfit. Nothing felt right. Too formal, too casual, too revealing, too conservative. Finally, she settled on a deep green dress that hugged her curves comfortably and made her feel confident rather than self-conscious. Lucien arrived precisely at 7, looking devastating in a charcoal suit. His eyes widened when he saw her. You're breathtaking. Heat flooded her cheeks. You're not too bad yourself. He offered his arm. Shall we? The car waiting outside was a sleek black luxury vehicle that probably cost more than her annual salary. The driver, a serious-looking man who also had pale skin and an otherworldly quality, nodded respectfully to Lucien. This is Victor, my head of security, Lucien explained as he helped her into the back seat. He'll be driving us tonight. Victor's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. Pleasure to meet you, Miss Vaughn. Any friend of the king is under our protection? Another vampire? Delilah whispered to Lucien as they pulled away from the curb. Yes, most of my inner circle is. It's easier that way, no complicated explanations needed. They drove to a restaurant Delilah had never heard of, tucked away in an old building downtown. The entrance was unmarked, just a heavy wooden door with a discreet brass knocker. Inside, the space was elegant and intimate, all dark wood and candlelight. Every table was private, separated by carved screens and strategic architecture. The host, an elegant woman with the same pale skin and ageless quality, greeted Lucien with a respectful bow. Your Majesty, your usual table is prepared. Delilah tried not to gape as they were led through the restaurant. Every patron they passed was clearly vampire, the pale skin, the red-tinged eyes, the supernatural grace. Some nodded to Lucien with varying degrees of deference, others simply watched with curiosity. Their table was in a private alcove completely separated from the main dining room. Crystal glasses and silver utensils gleamed in the candlelight. "This is a vampire restaurant?" Delilah asked once they were seated. "It caters to vampires primarily, yes. But the chef is human and prepares exceptional food for both vampires who appreciate the taste and art of cooking, and for human guests like yourself. You can order anything you like." A waiter appeared with menus and wine. Delilah ordered salmon, not really caring what she ate, too fascinated by her surroundings. Lucien ordered as well, explaining that while he didn't require solid food, he still enjoyed the taste and social aspect of dining. "Do the other vampires mind that you brought a human here?" she asked once they were alone again. "Some are curious, some are likely disapproving. But I'm the king and this is my territory. They'll keep their opinions to themselves." He poured her wine, the movement graceful. "Though I should mention, bringing a human here is significant. It signals that you're under my protection, that you're important to me. There will be talk." "What kind of talk?" "Speculation about our relationship. Questions about my intentions. Some will wonder if I plan to turn you." Delilah's hand froze halfway to her wineglass. "Turn me? Into a vampire? I don't. Not unless you wanted it, and even then it's not a decision to be made lightly. Immortality sounds romantic until you experience the reality of it, watching everyone you love age and die, seeing civilizations rise and fall, carrying centuries of memory and loss." His expression darkened. "I wouldn't wish this existence on anyone unless they truly understood what they were choosing. But it's possible. If someone wanted it, yes, though it's heavily regulated. Unauthorized turnings are punishable by death. The world doesn't need more vampires, and we're careful about who joins our ranks." Their food arrived, beautifully plated and fragrant. Delilah tried to focus on eating, but her mind spun with new information. The reality of Lucien's world was settling over her, vast and complicated. "Tell me about being king," she said. "What does that actually entail?" Lucien looked relieved to change the subject. He described the covenant system, the hierarchy of power, the constant negotiations between different vampire factions. He told her about disputes he had to mediate, laws he had to enforce, and alliances he had to maintain with other regional rulers. "It sounds exhausting," Delilah said. "It is, but it's also necessary. Without structure, without law, vampires would descend into chaos. We're predators by nature, and predators need rules to coexist with prey and with each other. Do you ever wish you could just not be king? Walk away from it all, every day?" The admission was quiet, almost painful. "But I can't. Too many depend on the stability I provide. And there are worse vampires who would seize power if I stepped down. At least I try to be just, to protect both vampires and humans where I can." Delilah reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. "That sounds incredibly lonely." "It has been. For a very long time." He turned his hand over, lacing their fingers together. "Until recently." The weight of his gaze made her heart race. This powerful, ancient being, looking at her like she was his salvation. It should have felt wrong. Instead, it felt like coming home. They talked through dinner and dessert, the conversation flowing easily from serious topics to lighter ones. Lucien had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard, and his stories about historical events he'd witnessed were fascinating. Delilah found herself laughing, genuinely relaxed in a way she hadn't been in months. As they left the restaurant, Lucien offered his arm again. "Would you like to see something special?" "What kind of special?" "Trust me." She shouldn't. This was only their first real date. But looking into his crimson eyes, feeling the solid presence of him beside her, Delilah found that she did trust him. "Okay." Victor drove them out of the city, into the hills where old estates perched among trees and shadows. They turned down a private drive that wound through manicured grounds, finally stopping before a mansion that looked like something from a Gothic novel. Stone walls, arched windows, turrets reaching toward the night sky. "This is my home," Lucien said. "I'd like to show you something inside if you're comfortable with that." Delilah should have been nervous, should have insisted on staying in public spaces. But curiosity overrode caution. "Lead the way." The interior was as impressive as the exterior, grand hallways with vaulted ceilings, artwork that looked centuries old, furniture that was somehow both antique and comfortable. Servants moved through the space with quiet efficiency, all of them vampire. Lucien led her through the mansion to a wing that seemed less formal, more personal. He stopped before a heavy door and pulled out an old-fashioned key. "This is my private space. Only a handful of people have ever been allowed inside." He unlocked the door and pushed it open. "I want you to see it." The room beyond was a revelation. It was a music room, large and circular, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the grounds. But the centerpiece was the piano, a magnificent grand piano, black and gleaming, positioned perfectly in the center of the space. Delilah's breath caught. Lucien, it's a Steinway from 1890. I've collected a few pianos over the centuries, but this one is my favorite. He moved to the instrument, running his hand along its polished surface. I haven't played in decades. I lost the joy of it somewhere along the way. But hearing you that day in the cafe, I remembered what it felt like to create something beautiful just for the sake of beauty. She approached slowly, drawn to the piano like a magnet. May I? Please. Delilah sat on the bench, running her fingers over the keys reverently. The tone was perfect, rich and resonant, obviously cared for by someone who understood the instrument. She began to play, letting her fingers find the melody naturally. Chopin's Nocturne, the same piece Lucien had heard that rainy day. She lost herself in the music, eyes closed, feeling the emotion flow through her and into the notes. When she finished, the last chord hung in the air like a prayer. Lucien was standing close, his expression raw with feeling. That's what I heard. That's exactly what drew me to you. You make me sound like some kind of siren. Perhaps you are. You certainly enchanted me. Delilah stood, and suddenly they were very close, separated by mere inches. She could feel the cool air that surrounded him, see the way his eyes glowed in the dim light. Lucien, tell me to stop and I will. Stop what? Instead of answering, he cupped her face with both hands, his touch gentle despite his strength. Then he kissed her and the world disappeared. His lips were cool but soft, moving against hers with a patience and tenderness that made her melt. There was restrained power in the kiss, like he was holding back an ocean of feeling to keep from overwhelming her. Delilah's hands came up to grip his shoulders, steadying herself as her knees went weak. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucien rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you in that church. Why didn't you? Because you deserve to be courted properly. Because consent matters, even to monsters. You're not a monster. I'm a vampire, Delilah. I've killed. I've done things over 3 centuries that would horrify you. I am what I am. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. Then tell me, if we're going to do this, if we're going to explore whatever this is between us, I need to know who you really are. All of it, good and bad. Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, but not here. Come with me. He led her to another room, this one clearly a study. Leather chairs faced a fireplace, and bookshelves lined the walls. They settled into the chairs and Lucien began to talk. He told her about his turning the fever that had nearly killed him, the vampire who'd seen potential and offered him a choice. He described the early years of bloodlust and learning control, the mistakes he'd made. He confessed to the people he'd killed in those first decades, before he learned discipline. He explained how he'd risen through vampire politics, sometimes through strategy and sometimes through violence. I'm not proud of everything I've done, he said quietly, but I try to be better now than I was then. I enforce laws that protect humans as well as vampires. I punish those who kill carelessly. I try to create a world where both species can coexist, even if humans don't know we exist. Delilah absorbed this, processing the reality of what he was telling her. Have you killed recently? Define recently, in the last year. Yes. 3 vampires who were murdering humans and threatening to expose our existence. It was execution, not murder, but they died by my hand. And you don't feel guilty about that? No, they were monsters in the truest sense. They had to be stopped. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Does that frighten you? Knowing what I'm capable of? Delilah thought about it honestly. It should, but the world isn't black and white. You've lived 300 years in a society I can barely imagine. You've had to make impossible choices. I can't judge that by human standards. You're remarkably accepting. I'm a realist. You saved my life, Lucien. Marcus would have killed me. Those vampires you executed would have killed other people. Sometimes violence is necessary to stop worse violence. I'm not naive enough to believe otherwise. Relief softened his features. I was afraid you'd run once you knew the truth. I might still. This is a lot to process. She offered a small smile. But I'm not running tonight. They talked for hours, Delilah asking questions about vampire nature and society, Lucien answering with patient honesty. He explained blood bonds, the connection that formed between vampires and regular donors. He described the political factions within the covenant, the old ones who resented his progressive views, and the younger vampires who wanted even more integration with the human world. It's a constant balancing act, he said, trying to move our society forward without causing civil war. Sounds like being president, but with more biting. His laugh was surprised and genuine. That's startlingly accurate. Eventually, Victor appeared to remind them of the time. It was past midnight. Delilah couldn't believe how many hours had passed. I should get you home, Lucien said reluctantly. Though I'd much rather you stay. Tempting, but I think that might be moving a little fast, even by Vampire King standards. Fair point. He stood and offered his hand. Will I see you again? Definitely. I mean, if you want to. Delilah, I've spent 6 months watching you from a distance. Now that I actually get to spend time with you, talk to you, touch you, I'm not going to voluntarily give that up. Heat flooded her cheeks. Then yes. Tomorrow? I have covenant business in the evening, but I'm free during the day if you are. They made plans for lunch and Victor drove her home. Lucien walked her to her apartment door, kissing her goodnight with a tenderness that made her toes curl. Sleep well, he murmured against her lips. You too. Do vampires sleep? We rest? It's not quite sleep, but similar enough. Rest well then. She floated into her apartment, touching her lips, still feeling the ghost of his kiss. Ashley was waiting on the couch, eyes sharp with concern and curiosity. Tell me everything, she demanded. Delilah did, spilling the entire evening in a rush of words and feelings. Ashley listened, her expression cycling through disbelief, concern, and reluctant acceptance. You're really doing this, she said when Delilah finished. You're dating a vampire. I'm dating Lucien, who happens to be a vampire. That's a pretty significant detail to gloss over, I know. But Ash, when I'm with him, I feel seen in a way I've never experienced before. He looks at me like I'm precious, like I matter beyond my appearance or my usefulness. After everything with Marcus, after a lifetime of feeling like I was never quite enough, that feeling is addictive. Ashley sighed. I just want you to be safe and happy. I am both of those things, I promise. The next few weeks passed in a blur of discovery and growing connection. Delilah saw Lucien nearly every day, their relationship deepening with each meeting. He introduced her to other vampires in his inner circle, and while some were skeptical of her presence, most were accepting once they saw how much she meant to their king. She met Nikolai, Lucien's second in command, a serious Russian vampire who'd been turned in the 1800s. He regarded Delilah with initial suspicion that gradually warmed to protective respect. Victor became a familiar presence, driving them places and providing security with quiet efficiency. Isabella, a Spanish vampire who managed the Covenant's financial interests, took an immediate liking to Delilah and began teaching her about vampire politics and history. You need to understand the world you're entering, Isabella said over coffee one afternoon while Lucien was in meetings. There are vampires who will see you as a weakness, a way to manipulate the king. You need to be prepared for that. How do I prepare for centuries-old vampires trying to manipulate me? By being smarter than them. You're human, yes, but that doesn't make you less capable. Use your intelligence, trust your instincts, and never ever show fear. They can smell it. Delilah absorbed this advice, grateful for the guidance. The vampire world was complex and sometimes frightening, but she was determined to understand it. For Lucien and increasingly for herself. One evening, 6 weeks into their relationship, Lucien took her to a covenant gathering. It was held in a grand hall beneath the city, a space that seemed carved from living rock and decorated with centuries of accumulated wealth. Hundreds of vampires filled the hall, all dressed formally, all powerful and ancient in ways that made Delilah feel suddenly very small and mortal. Stay close to me, Lucien murmured, his hand firm on her lower back. Some of these vampires are traditionalists who don't approve of humans in our spaces. They won't harm you, they wouldn't dare, but they may try to intimidate. Great, intimidating vampires. That's not terrifying at all. His lips quirked. You're stronger than you think, and you're under my protection. No one will touch you. They moved through the crowd, Lucien greeting various vampires with varying degrees of warmth. Delilah noticed the stares, the way conversations stopped as they passed. She held her head high, refusing to show the nervousness churning in her stomach. Then they reached the center of the room, where a group of older vampires stood in a circle. Their power was palpable, pressing against Delilah's skin like static electricity. Lucien's posture straightened, becoming more formal. Elders, he said, nodding respectfully. An ancient female vampire with white hair that seemed to glow and eyes like rubies stepped forward. Lucien, we've been waiting to meet your human, Lady Seraphina. May I present Delilah Vaughn? Delilah, this is Lady Seraphina, elder of the Eastern Territories and member of the High Council. Delilah wasn't sure if she should bow or curtsy or what. She settled for a respectful nod. It's an honor to meet you, Lady Seraphina. Those ancient eyes studied her with unsettling intensity. You're the one who's captured our king's attention. Tell me, what makes you worthy of such focus? The question was designed to put her on the defensive, to make her stumble. Delilah recognized the power play. I don't know if I'm worthy. That's for Lucien to decide. But I care about him, and I'm willing to learn about his world. That's all I can offer. Care, Seraphina repeated, tasting the word. Such a human sentiment. Tell me, do you understand what you're involving yourself in? The dangers, the complications? I'm learning. It's overwhelming, but I'm not naive enough to think this is simple. Another elder, a male vampire with sharp features and calculating eyes, spoke up. The king's affections have been targeted before. Humans seeking power, vampires seeking favor. What makes you different from the countless others who've tried to use him? Lucien's hand tightened on her back, a warning growl building in his chest. Enough, Ambrose. Delilah is not here to be interrogated. She is if she's going to be involved with you, Ambrose countered. Your choices affect the entire covenant, Your Majesty. We have a right to ensure she's not a liability. Delilah felt anger spark beneath her fear. I'm not using him. I didn't even know vampires existed until 6 weeks ago. I'm here because he asked me to be, and because I want to be, not because of some political scheme. Seraphina's expression shifted, something like approval flickering in her ancient eyes. She has spine. I'll give her that. She turned to Lucien. Very well, bring your human to the gathering. Let's see how she handles our world. It felt like a test, and Delilah didn't understand the rules, but Lucien seemed satisfied. He guided her away from the elders toward a quieter corner of the hall. I'm sorry about that, he said. They're protective of covenant stability. They see my interest in you as a potential weakness. Is it? A weakness, I mean? Yes and no. Loving someone gives your enemies a target, but it also gives you something to fight for beyond duty. It makes you remember why protecting this world matters. He cupped her face gently. You make me remember why I do this, why I've fought for 3 centuries to create something better. That's not a weakness, that's strength. The words squeezed her heart. I love you too, she whispered, the admission slipping out before she could stop it. Lucien's eyes flared bright red, glowing in the dim light. Delilah, I know it's fast, I know it's probably crazy, but I can't help how I feel. These past weeks with you, learning about your world, being part of your life, it's been the best time of my life. You make me feel cherished and strong and like I finally belong somewhere. So yes, I love you. If that makes me a liability, I'm sorry, but I can't help it. His kiss was fierce and claiming, right there in front of hundreds of vampires. Delilah heard gasps and murmurs around them, but she didn't care. All that mattered was Lucien's arms around her, his cool lips on hers, the certainty that this impossible thing between them was real. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. You're not a liability. You're everything. And I love you more than I thought possible after all these centuries. The gathering continued around them, but Delilah barely noticed. She was lost in Lucien's eyes, in the feeling of rightness that settled over her like a blanket. Later that night, back at the mansion, they made love for the first time. Lucien was gentle and passionate by turns, worshipping her body with a reverence that made her cry. He traced every curve, kissed every inch of her skin, made her feel beautiful in a way she'd never experienced before. You're perfect, he murmured against her neck, his fangs grazing her skin but never breaking it. Every part of you perfect. Delilah arched against him, lost in sensation and emotion. Lucien, I have you. I'll always have you. Afterward, they lay tangled together in his bed, her head on his chest, his hands stroking her hair. The room was dark except for moonlight streaming through the windows. What happens now? Delilah asked quietly. Where do we go from here? Wherever you want. I know this life is complicated, but I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe and happy. Even if I want to stay human, to not be turned, even then. Though I hope you'll live with me here, where I can protect you properly. The covenant world can be dangerous for unprotected humans. Delilah thought about her apartment, her teaching job, her carefully constructed normal life. It seemed distant now, less real than the vampire king holding her in his arms. I'll need to sort things out, give notice at work, deal with my lease. But yes, I want to be here with you. You're sure? This is a permanent decision, Delilah. Once you're known as mine, as part of my household, there's no going back to your old life. I'm sure. My old life nearly got me killed by a cheating fiancé. This new life, as complicated and strange as it is, feels right. You feel right. His arms tightened around her. Then we'll make it work. Whatever challenges come, we'll face them together. They fell asleep like that, Delilah wrapped in Lucien's protection, both of them content for the first time in longer than either could remember. The next few months were a whirlwind of change. Delilah moved into the mansion, converting one of the rooms into a music studio where she could practice and teach private lessons remotely. She continued her work but on her own terms, teaching students who appreciated her talent rather than those assigned to her by a school system. The vampire world gradually became familiar. She attended covenant gatherings with Lucien, learned the complex politics and hierarchies, and made allies among the more progressive vampires. Some still regarded her with suspicion, but most accepted her presence once they saw she wasn't trying to manipulate their king. Then came the night that tested everything. Delilah was in her music studio, working on a new composition, when Victor burst in without knocking. "Miss Vaughn, we need to get you to the secure room immediately." "What? Why?" "There's been an attack. Rebels who oppose the king's progressive policies, they're coming for you." Fear spiked through her. "Where's Lucien, fighting them? He sent me to protect you. We need to move now." Victor rushed her through the mansion to a hidden room behind a bookshelf in the library. The space was small but fortified with supplies and communication equipment. "Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone but the king or me. Understand?" Delilah nodded, her heart pounding. Victor sealed her inside and she was alone with her fear, hours past. She could hear muffled sounds occasionally, crashes, shouts, things that might have been fighting. Every noise made her jump. She tried calling Lucien's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Finally, just before dawn, the door opened. Lucien stood there, his clothes torn and bloodied, his face exhausted but relieved. "Delilah, thank God." She launched herself at him and he caught her, holding her tight. "I was so scared. Are you all right?" "I'm fine. The rebels are dealt with. You're safe now." "What happened?" "A faction that believes I've gone too soft, that I'm weakening the covenant by caring about human lives. They thought killing you would send a message." His voice was dark with barely controlled rage. "They were wrong." Delilah pulled back to look at him. "You killed them." "Yes, every single one. No one threatens you and lives." The intensity in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, she felt a fierce rush of feeling. "Take me to bed." His eyes widened. "Delilah, I'm covered in blood. I need to clean up. You should rest." "Take me to bed," she repeated, her voice firmer. "I need to feel alive right now. I need to feel us." Understanding flickered across his features. He lifted her into his arms and carried her to his chambers. They made love with desperate intensity, reassuring each other that they were safe, that they'd survived, that what they had was worth fighting for. Later, as Lucien cleaned up and changed, Delilah made a decision. "I want you to turn me." He froze. "What? I want to become a vampire. I want to be with you properly, without the constant fear that I'm a weakness or a target. I want to be strong enough to stand beside you, not just hide behind you." Lucien crossed to her, taking her hands in his. "Delilah, no. You don't know what you're asking. Immortality is a burden as much as a gift. I know that, you've explained it. But I also know that I love you, and I can't bear the thought of growing old while you stay the same. I can't bear being the weak link that your enemies exploit. And honestly, I want this. I want to be part of your world fully, not just as a human observer. You need to think about this longer. Give it time. How much time? A year? 10 years? It won't change how I feel. Please, Lucien, trust me to know my own mind." He studied her face for a long moment. "The process is painful, and there's a risk not every turning is successful. You could die. I trust you, and I'm willing to take that risk. You'll lose your humanity, your ability to walk in daylight without consequence, to enjoy food the same way, to have children naturally. There's so much you'll give up." Delilah cupped his face. "And I'll gain eternity with you. That's worth any sacrifice." Tears, actual tears, gathered in Lucien's eyes. "You're sure? Absolutely certain?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He kissed her then, deep and emotional. "All right, but not immediately. I want you to have a few more weeks to think about it, to say goodbye to your mortal life if that's what you choose, and we'll do it properly, with the covenant's blessing so there are no legal complications. Okay? A few weeks, then I want you to turn me." The next month was bittersweet. Delilah said goodbye to her mother, making up an excuse about traveling abroad for work. She couldn't tell her the truth. The covenant laws forbade revealing vampire existence to uninformed humans. She called old friends, tied up loose ends, and spent time doing the small human things she'd taken for granted. Eating elaborate meals, walking in the sunshine, feeling the warmth on her skin. Lucien was patient and attentive through it all, making sure she had no regrets. He explained the turning process in detail, how his blood mixed with hers would trigger the transformation, how she'd sleep for 3 days while her body changed, how she'd wake with new powers and instincts that would take time to master. "I'll be with you every moment," he promised. "You won't go through this alone." The night of the turning arrived. The covenant held a formal ceremony in the grand hall, recognizing Delilah's choice and accepting her into their ranks. Lady Seraphina presided, her ancient eyes softer than Delilah had ever seen them. "You understand this choice is permanent?" Seraphina asked. "I do. And you make it freely, without coercion?" "I make it freely because I love him and because I want to be part of this world. Then by the authority vested in me as elder of the High Council, I approve this turning. May you find eternity worthy of the sacrifice." Back in Lucien's chambers, he prepared everything carefully. Soft blankets, medical supplies just in case, blackout curtains to keep the room dark during her transformation. Last chance to change your mind, he said softly. Delilah kissed him. Turn me, make me yours forever. He kissed her neck, his fangs extending. This will hurt, I'm sorry. Then he bit down and pain exploded through her body. She gasped, clutching at his shoulders as he drank deeply. Her vision went blurry, her heartbeat slowing. Just when she thought she might die, Lucien pulled away and bit his own wrist, pressing the wound to her lips. Drink, he commanded. His blood tasted strange, cold and metallic, but somehow right. She drank, feeling it burn down her throat and into her veins. Her body began to convulse, the transformation starting. Lucien held her through it, murmuring reassurances as the pain overwhelmed her, and darkness claimed her consciousness. She dreamed in fragments memories of her human life mixed with new sensations and instincts. She felt her body changing, cells reorganizing, mortality giving way to something else. When she finally woke 3 days later, the world was different. Sharper, brighter, more vivid in every way. She could hear Lucien's breathing from across the room, could smell the specific scent of different types of fabric, could feel the individual threads in the sheets beneath her. Lucien? Her voice sounded different, richer somehow. He was beside her instantly. I'm here, how do you feel? Strange, everything is so intense. She sat up, marveling at how easy the movement was, how strong she felt. Is this normal? Completely normal, your senses are enhanced now. It takes time to adjust. He held up a mirror, look. Delilah stared at her reflection and gasped. Her skin was pale now, luminous like Lucien's. Her hair had lightened to a soft white blonde, and her eyes, they glowed the same crimson as his. I'm beautiful, she whispered, barely recognizing herself. You were always beautiful. Now others can see it the way I've always seen you. She touched her face, marveling at the changes. I'm really a vampire. You're really a vampire, my equal in every way now. Tears gathered in her eyes, vampire tears that glowed faintly red. I don't regret it. This feeling, this strength, it's incredible. Good, because now comes the hard part, learning control. You'll need to feed soon. The bloodlust will be strong at first. They spent the next weeks working on her control. Lucien arranged for donors, teaching her how to feed without killing, how to manage the hunger that was now a constant companion. It was difficult, overwhelming at times, but Delilah adapted. She was strong-willed and determined, traits that served her well in her new existence. Isabella and Nikolai helped train her in vampire abilities, enhanced speed, strength, and the subtle powers of influence and persuasion that came with age. She practiced moving through shadows, controlling her bloodlust, and defending herself against potential threats. You're a natural, Isabella said after a particularly successful training session. Most new vampires take years to develop this level of control. You've mastered it in weeks. I'm motivated. I want to be worthy of standing beside Lucien. You already are. He lights up when you're near, did you know that? In 3 centuries I've never seen him this happy. Those words warmed Delilah more than she could express. She'd made the right choice. This strange, impossible life was exactly where she belonged. 6 months after her turning, the Covenant held a celebration in honor of Delilah's successful transformation and her formal recognition as the king's consort. Vampires from across North America attended, filling the grand hall with centuries of accumulated power and presence. Delilah wore a gown of deep red, her white hair styled in elegant waves, her crimson eyes bright with confidence. She stood beside Lucien at the front of the hall, his hand in hers, feeling the weight of hundreds of gazes but no longer intimidated by them. Lady Seraphina raised her glass. To Delilah Vaughn, now Delilah Ashford by covenant law, who has proven herself worthy of standing beside our king. May their partnership bring strength to our territories and wisdom to our laws. To Delilah, the gathered vampires echoed, raising their glasses in unison. Later, after the formal ceremony ended and the celebration moved into dancing and socializing, Lucien pulled Delilah into a private alcove. Happy? Incredibly, though I still can't believe this is my life now. Eternity to get used to it, he said with a smile. Any regrets? Not one. This is where I belong, with you in this world as who I am now. She wrapped her arms around his neck. Thank you for giving me this chance, for seeing me when no one else did. Thank you for choosing me despite all the complications, for loving me enough to transform your entire existence. He kissed her softly. I will spend eternity making sure you never regret that choice. I won't, I promise. They danced together under the crystal chandeliers, surrounded by their people, secure in the knowledge that they'd found something rare and precious, a love that transcended mortality, a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine affection. Years passed in a blur of contentment. Delilah grew into her power, eventually taking on administrative duties within the Covenant. She discovered a talent for mediation and diplomacy, helping resolve disputes between factions with a fairness that earned widespread respect. Her music became legendary among vampires, her compositions performed at gatherings and celebrations throughout their world. Lucien relaxed in ways he hadn't in centuries, secure in having a true partner rather than simply an heir or second in command. Together they pushed for progressive reforms, better protections for humans, stricter laws against unauthorized turnings, and more integration between vampire society and the modern world. There were challenges, of course. Traditionalists who resented the changes. Threats from outside their territory. The constant politics of vampire society. But they faced everything together, drawing strength from their bond. One evening, exactly 10 years after Delilah's turning, they returned to the Harmony Cafe where their story had begun. The building had been purchased by the Covenant and carefully preserved, maintained as a piece of their personal history. Delilah sat at the old upright piano, now restored to perfect condition. Her fingers the familiar melody, Chopin's Nocturne, the piece that had first caught Lucien's attention all those years ago. Lucien stood by the window watching her play, his expression soft with love and contentment. When she finished, he crossed to her and knelt beside the bench. 10 years ago, I was a king who had forgotten how to feel. Then I heard you play and everything changed. You gave me back my humanity even as you gave up yours. You've made eternity feel like a gift rather than a burden. Delilah cupped his face, marveling as always at his beauty. You saved me from a life of settling for less than I deserved. You showed me that I was worthy of real love, of being cherished. We saved each other. I love you, Delilah Ashford, for now and always. I love you too, Lucien Ashford, for eternity. They kissed in the empty cafe, the place where their impossible love story had begun, surrounded by the music that had brought them together. Outside, the city moved through its evening rhythms, humans going about their lives unaware of the vampire couple celebrating a decade of partnership and devotion. Delilah thought back to that awful day in the church, standing at an altar about to make the biggest mistake of her life. She remembered the cruelty of the guests, the shame she'd felt, the crushing weight of their judgment. Then she remembered Lucien walking through those cathedral doors like an avenging angel, silencing the altar with a single look, changing the course of her entire existence. She'd lost everything that day, her fiancé, her human life, the safety of ignorance about the supernatural world. But she'd gained something infinitely more valuable, a love that transcended mortality, a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine affection, and a purpose beyond simply existing. What are you thinking about? Lucien asked, studying her expression. About how grateful I am that Marcus was a cheating bastard. If he'd been faithful, I would have married him and missed all of this. Lucien laughed, the sound rich and warm. Remind me to send him a thank you note. He's in prison for the rest of his life. I think he's suffered enough. Fair point. Lucien stood, pulling her to her feet. Come on, let's go home. Home. The word filled Delilah with warmth. The mansion had become her sanctuary, filled with music and books and memories of the life she'd built with Lucien. Their chambers were her favorite place, the space where they could be simply themselves, without the weight of titles and responsibilities. That night they made love slowly and thoroughly, savoring each touch and kiss. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, they talked about the future plans for the Covenant, music Delilah wanted to compose, territories they wanted to visit. Do you ever miss being human? Lucien asked quietly. Delilah considered the question honestly. Sometimes I miss the simplicity, being able to walk in the sun without consequence, the taste of regular food, but those are small things compared to what I've gained. I wouldn't trade this life for anything, not even for mortality, for the chance to have a normal human lifespan with someone else. She rolled to face him, her crimson eyes meeting his. Especially not for that. I choose you, Lucien, every day, every night for eternity. You're my person, and nothing could make me regret choosing this life with you. His arms tightened around her. You're my person too, my heart, my partner, my love. Everything good in my existence comes from you. They held each other as the night deepened, secure in the knowledge that they'd found something rare and precious, a love that would last forever, built on the foundation of mutual respect, genuine affection, and the courage to choose each other despite impossible odds. The guests had sneered at the plus-size bride that day in the church. The vampire king had silenced the altar with a look, and in doing so he'd saved her life and given her a love beyond anything she'd dreamed possible. Now, 10 years later and forever changed, Delilah understood that sometimes the worst moments of your life are actually doorways to something better. Sometimes the universe destroys what you thought you wanted to make room for what you actually need. And sometimes, love comes in the most unexpected forms, ancient and powerful, dangerous and beautiful, impossible and absolutely perfect, Delilah drifted off to rest in Lucien's arms, a smile on her lips and peace in her immortal heart. She'd found her place in the world, her purpose, her forever, and it was magnificent.